how many of you love to do DIY projects around the house? Do it yourself. You're going to save some money. You're going to be proud of what you do. It's going to be great. I am one of those people that likes to do that. The problem is I get just enough involved to sometimes get in some trouble. I remember before we moved out of the last house we lived in, I refloored the entire living area. And I did it with a composite bamboo that I got from Lumber Liquidators. And it was a good price, and I felt like after watching the instructional videos that I could do it. And so I got the equipment that I needed, I got it out, got started. And what do you know? When you are doing these things, you have to take proper measurements of the wood. And that phrase, measure twice, cut once, should be true. Sometimes I found myself measuring twice and cutting 2 or 3 times, even though I had tried my very best. The problem is that I did not have the experience or the know-how to really be able to do this well and efficiently when I was getting started. By the time I was done, I was getting pretty good at it and could measure well and cut correctly. But let's just say I'm happy for baseboards, or you'd see kind of a jagged line up next to the wall. It's kind of that way with God's love and mercy. I read through today Romans chapter 9, and there are some gems in Romans 9. If you haven't read it before, here's a few highlights. It wasn't Abraham's seed that gave identity. It was God's promise. Paul had talked about how there were the Israelites by birth and there was the Israelites by spirit. God's promise and embracing that promise was what defined an Israelite in spirit. Other gems in here. What God did in this case made it perfectly plain that his purpose is not a hit or miss thing dependent on what we do or don't do, but a sure thing determined by his decision flowing steadily from his initiative. And I tie that into my project because when the experienced builder, when the one who knows what he's doing starts the work, it's done perfectly. If I start the work, it's going to be quite imperfect. But God's mercy, God's love and compassion, when it starts from his initiative, it works perfectly. When God's promise determines our identity as opposed to just what we try to do, it works. Further, it says in Romans chapter 9, compassion doesn't originate in our bleeding hearts or moral sweat, but in God's mercy. And he continues, all we're saying is that God has the first word, initiating the action in which we play our part for good or ill. It is an amazing thing when we allow God to be the initiator of compassion and love and mercy. If we were to determine these things, we would do it so unbalanced, we would do it so biased, we would do it so badly if it was just all coming from us, that it would create more problems than it would solve. In history, any time that love or mercy or compassion gets its start in the heart of a person as opposed to the heart of God, it turns into a quagmire, a chaotic mess. We've even had, I believe that's even at the genesis sometimes of bias and racism and exclusivity. And we're called to not have a part in it. What we're called to do is to embrace God's promise. And his promise to us is that if we embrace Jesus, we are saved, and we're called to be disciples, and we're called to exercise the love, the compassion, and the mercy of Jesus to those around us. It flows right into our mission statement as a church. We exist to extend the ministry of Christ into our community with hope and wholeness. But if that hope and if that wholeness and even that ministry is just from our ideas and we haven't bathed it in prayer, if our focus is not on Jesus and loving him, it won't work. It won't have the desired effect. So my encouragement to you, continually, every single day, embrace Jesus. Focus on Jesus. Don't let him be the stumbling block, as it says, that you trip over. Let him be the cornerstone that you encounter as you are focusing on Jesus and allowing him to determine the initiative of love and compassion in your life. Pray that the Holy Spirit would place the love and compassion and mercy of Jesus in your life, because when we do that, we'll display it well to those around us. I hope this was a blessing to you, and I hope you have a great weekend. God bless.